I'm Eli Grant. I teach history for a living, but the truth is, there's a part of my own story I never really understood. Growing up, my grandfather was a name I'd heard maybe once. Thomas E. Grant. No photos, no stories. Just silence. My father never spoke about him, and over time, I stopped wondering why. It wasn't until much later, after my mother passed, that I found something buried in the basement. A small box. Inside, letters, dozens of them, written by a man I'd never met, to a son who never read them. And that's where this story begins. It was raining hard the day I found it, one of those New England storms that makes the walls creak and the past feel close. I was clearing out my mother's old house after the funeral, going through boxes that hadn't been touched in decades. Behind a warped shelf in the basement, I noticed a small metal box, rusted, dented, sealed shut with an old latch. Faded handwriting was scribbled across the top. To my son, if I never return. I held my breath. I had never known my grandfather. All I had ever been told was that he died in World War II. There were no pictures, no heirlooms. His name had become more myth than memory. I opened the box with careful hands. Inside were over 30 letters, numbered, folded, and worn with time. Each one began with the same words: Ethan, my son. Ethan, my father. A man who had never once spoken of his own father, and now I was holding his story in my hands. That night I sat alone in my study, a warm lamp at my side and a stack of unread letters before me. I opened the first one, April 5th, 1944, Normandy, France. Ethan. If you're reading this, it means I may not have made it home. But know that I never walked away. I was caught in something bigger than all of us, and every day I thought of you. The writing was uneven. Some words scratched out, others smudged by what might have been sweat or rain or something else. But it was the tone that got me. He wasn't writing as a soldier. He was writing as a father. Each letter told stories of war, yes, but also of fear, humility, and love, of holding on to dignity when the world around you was burning, of believing in something beyond survival. Bravery isn't about feeling strong. It's about choosing not to run, even when every part of you wants to. By the fourth letter, I stopped seeing Thomas as a stranger. I began to see him as a man I might have admired, and I couldn't shake the thought. My father never read these. 2 days later, I drove to visit my dad. He lived alone in a quiet house outside Boston. We hadn't talked much in recent years, but I knew I had to show him the letters. When I placed the box on his kitchen table, he stared at it like it was a ghost. "I found these in Grandma's basement," I said. "They're from your father." He looked away. After a long silence, he said quietly, "I knew they existed. I found them when I was a teenager." "You never opened them?" "I thought he abandoned us," he replied. "That's what Mom always told me. He went to war and never came back, never sent a letter, never called." So I thought, why should I care? I handed him the first letter. He read it slowly, lips moving without sound. I saw his hands trembling slightly. A tear slid down his cheek. "I never knew he wrote to me," he said. "I thought I was forgotten. Turns out, he never stopped trying." Later that night, he told me something I'll never forget. "Every time I heard someone talk about fathers and sons, I felt like I was watching life through a window. I was standing outside, in the cold, looking in." He paused, then whispered, "But these letters, it's like someone finally opened the door." Something about the letters stayed with me. Why write so many and never send even one? Why was there no death notice, no military record confirming his end? I started digging. Old archives, war records, any clue I could find. And then, I found it. Thomas E. Grant was never declared dead. Only missing in action. A 1947 report suggested he had been wounded, possibly taken in by the French resistance, but never returned to the U.S. The trail went cold after that. So I did something most people would call crazy. I flew to France. In a quiet town called Bayeux, I met an elderly woman named Madeleine. She ran a bookshop near the church and remembered a man who had come to her village decades ago. When I showed her my grandfather's photo, she didn't need a second look. "He worked in the garden behind the chapel," she said softly. "He was quiet, gentle, missing an arm. We never knew his real name, but he would always say Ethan in his sleep." Every week he came to her shop to buy envelopes and ink. She handed me 4 letters she had kept all these years, letters addressed to Ethan, never mailed. "He didn't remember where home was," she told me, "but he knew he had one." Back in my hotel room, I read the 4 letters by the window, watching the sun fall over a town that once held my grandfather's footsteps. "I don't remember your face, but your name stays with me. I say it out loud so I don't lose it. Sometimes I dream I'm sitting beside you, reading. I don't know what book. I just know I don't want the dream to end." Each letter was a whisper from a fractured mind, but there was love in every line. Quiet, persistent, alive. My grandfather hadn't vanished. He had been lost, but not in spirit. When I brought those letters home, my father read them by the fire. He didn't say much, but afterward, he folded them like something sacred, stood up, and said, "I thought I had no father, but maybe I just didn't know where to look." That night he sat at his desk and wrote a letter. It began simply, "Dad, I forgive you. If this story touched something in you, maybe a memory, a silence in your own family, or simply reminded you of how powerful words can be, I hope you'll stay with us. There are more stories like this. Stories of second chances, of voices that almost got lost, of people finding their way home in the quietest of ways. So if you haven't already, subscribe, leave a comment, or share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes, one story is all it takes to remind us we're not alone. The letters now rest in a wooden box on my bookshelf. Sometimes I read one to my students. I don't tell them it's mine. I just say it's from a soldier who never made it home. But the truth is, he did. Not in body, not in medals, but in words. Through those letters, I came to understand that courage doesn't always wear a uniform. Sometimes it looks like a man planting flowers in a church garden, speaking a son's name into the wind, hoping someone, someday, might hear it. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is remember.